Alrighty, so back to sharing my screen one more time. There we go. All right, so real quick, again, it's kind of light this time of year in terms of WordPress news and events. In fact, I didn't see any WordCamps coming up in the at least this time period. I definitely like to call it other meetup groups. Again, we highly encourage folks don't just attend us. There's plenty of great meetup groups out there. One that caught my eyes, the WordPress accessibility meetup, and again, I know it's a topic near and dear to Peter's heart. So they have a talk coming up. Chris Hines is speaking on Thursday, December 5th. It's 11 a.m. Eastern time. It's an interesting take on accessibility because I've heard this sometimes, creating websites for clients where they think accessibility is expensive. And while it's true, it's not free. It can be a difficult thing, I think, to quantify to say, well, what's it going to cost or how do you account for that work? So seems like a really interesting topic. So he's going to cover, essential accessibility products and services, and really kind of help people gain some insight into cost. So even if you're not creating sites for a client, if you're thinking about adding some accessibility features to your own site, I think it's definitely well worth checking out this meetup. I'll put the link to that. I'll put the link to that in the chat window. That was the only other one. I was going to put a slide out for it, but to be honest, in folks who don't follow kind of the WordPress news sphere, I kind of left it off intentionally, but there is going to be the State of the Word
Yeah.
presentation coming up sometime in December. And I know some meetup groups are doing watch parties. To be honest, the way the environment is right now and some of the stuff happening in WordPress, I feel free to watch it. Personally, I probably won't. We definitely will not do a watch party for it, but just want to throw that out there. That one you'll see if you go to WordPress.org under news. You'll find out more info on that. So that's all I had really for news stuff. Peter, do you have a tool or tip
Yeah,
spotlight?
I do. But I also put a link
For
into
sure.
the chat. It is for the now what has become the official place for links to events that are like the meetups and things like that. But the link that I included is the way that I normally go to it, which then pre-filters it for it filters it for Canada, Great Britain, Ireland, and the US, just as something that works for me, primarily English speaking, and some people I actually might know. And then the online type meetup. So that link will kind of pre-filter things for you when you go to the upcoming events link on WordPress.org, events.wordpress.org. And I go there, pretty regularly to go, okay. I think it's easier often, although I haven't done a one-to-one comparison than going to Meetup, because Meetup is regional. And then even when you do a search for WordPress, I get a lot of weird stuff that isn't WordPress. I don't know why. Um, so there's that. All right, I'm going to grab the screen. I'll show you something real quick. Okay, so I think the main tool and tip is related to what we're talking about today with upgrading core WordPress. I know that many have upgraded with no problem, and many have not upgraded with no problem. In other words, they ran into some issues. So I mean, the main tip is have a backup. That's always something that you always want to make sure of. If you're not sure, check with your web host to see that they run backups. Do they run them nightly? Can you do an on-demand backup? Can you download that backup? Have you tested to make sure that you can restore from the backup? But get a backup of a site. You can also consider running a staging site as a kind of live backup. Check things before you upgrade it, that type of thing. A plugin for backing up that I found, I actually use something called it's Backup Buddy, which is now it's under the Solid WP, so it's Solid Backup, but it used to be Backup Buddy. They acquired it. But in terms of the free ones in the repository, I personally found that WP Vivid is one of the easiest to use. We've had previous meetups where we talked about backup plugins, but the one that I felt was kind of the easiest to grab a backup. It doesn't package it in a way, at least at the time that I used it, that I couldn't use it later or whatever. But you certainly have several options for getting a backup. And then if there's an issue, you roll back by restoring from a current backup. So again, running a backup right before is a good idea. Now, in terms of, well, what if you don't do that? There are other ways of rolling back. One is to download an FTP, the previous version, so WordPress 6.6.2 files, and then upload them through FTP or something to that effect. Kind of icky, kind of troublesome if you're not comfortable with it. There are a couple of plugins that do this. There's an old plugin that I tested earlier that works fine, and there's a new plugin that I didn't test. We could test it today if you want, whatever. But WP Downgrade worked for me. And all that WP Downgrade does, see how, it's hasn't been updated in 2 years, but I tested it. People are still using it. It always received high ratings. It'd be nice if they did upgrade it. The other one that I was looking at was Core Rollback, which is another plugin. Very simply does this. But if we go, I'll go to Playground. Let me close this. This was the I'm in Playground. I have 6.7 loaded. If I go to plugins, install plugin, and I'm going to look for add a new plugin, and what did I say that was? Core, not Core Rollback, WP Downgrade. And always just here's a tip. Spaces matter when looking for plugins. So you'll find sometimes you'll go, oh, it's WP, WP Vivid has no space between the P and the V. And it matters when you do a search. Sometimes the things aren't found nearly as easily. It's kind of it's not a smart search. But let me look for WP Downgrade. And look, it's not even
There it is. So
right.
it's like,
But great example of not first, even though that's the name of it. So I'm going to install this. This is on Playground, which is a an in the cloud version of WordPress for those who haven't used it. So it's running now. The way this works is it's very interesting. Right now, it's saying WP Downgrade is not active. If you have to know the version you want to go to, and what you're looking for. Here, let me. Normally, when you go to updates, you will see under your dashboard, under updates, you'll see you have 6.7. You can reinstall 6.7. Okay. What this plugin does is now if I change this to 6.6.2 and save the changes, it's going to say those are active. Now, if we go to that same link, that changes under dashboard updates. It says reinstall version 6.6.2. So that's what it's changing. So the reinstall part, this plugin has gone in and said, no, don't reinstall 6.7, install, and I'll tell you the version, in this case, 6.6.2. So this is a way to roll back, and it does work. It will, if you run this, well, in Playground it didn't run, but I tested somewhere else. When you run it, it'll go out and pull those files, and now you'll downgrade. So that's the tip. Don't panic if things don't work. There's ways of getting out, but the best option that you can do, like always, is make sure that you have a backup. Do things in a staging environment if your host has it. Maybe another meetup will do. There are some ways of doing staging even with plugins. There's some pretty interesting tools for that. But that's my tip.
cool.
This is an imperfect world.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. All right, so let's jump into the meat of things. So give me 1 second to share my screen again. All right, so WordPress 6.7. I guess just in general, and definitely like your comments on this, Peter, too. Again, we don't rehearse this part ahead of time. I would say this is in terms of the other. So this is set some context. I think this is the 4th WordPress release this year, I believe. And correct me if I'm wrong. I 3rd or 4th. I thought it was the 4th. Anyway, I would say of the releases this year, to me, at least, at a first glance, it's kind of the least, I don't want to say impressive, like I'm some snob who could do better, but you know what I mean? Like it's the least drastic, I think, in terms of features. There's a lot of stuff still in it. And in fact, as we'll talk about, there's probably a lot of subtle changes. So I think I heard somebody else, as I was researching this, calling, this is a very subtle release, which is probably not bad. You don't want to end the year with like a giant drastic release that breaks a lot of things. So, but it does have some good new features, some things that have moved around. Like I said, and what we'll try to do today is we'll cover those in some detail. Again, we'll show live examples, and obviously, if you have questions, let us know, put them in the chat, etc. So the big change, and maybe I'll run through this real quick of what's in it, just a quick overview thing, and then Peter, you and I will figure out like how we want, like what one we want to do and bounce around. So at a real high level, probably one of the big changes is a new theme. So in general, for people who are new to WordPress, WordPress itself typically releases one major theme, like once a year, typically at the end of the year for the next year. So the 2025 theme is the one that's pre-packaged in with it. And so we're going to go over that and show you kind of what's in it and kind of how you may want to use parts of it or may use it entirely, etc. Some neat features here, the zoom out feature, kind of a cool way to look at a site as you're working on it. the one I'll try to cover, connecting blocks. I'll get back to this one later. This is my albatross here, connecting blocks. The third release, I've been trying to talk about that one. Things with fonts, there's a couple of things with fonts in here. We'll cover that. And then some of these, as I said, there's some under the cover things like performance. We probably won't get a chance to look at that necessarily in any detail. Accessibility, I don't know of any specifics in here, but that may be something that either Peter, you may know, or we may go back to, or we may see as we're demoing. And a couple of neat ones too, so support for these HEIC images. I know like iPhones, I think typically that's your standard format unless you change something around. So being able to support images like directly from your iPhone. Query loop block, I think we'll show an example of that. Some changes as well, like I said, more quality of life things about the drop down preview. Site background, I'll show an example of that. I'm not sure how many people are still using that. Then a couple other things too, especially the site editor and the template registration API. So that's what we're going to cover. Oh, sorry, George, I see you have a hand raised.
Yeah, the HEIC support, is that browser independent? Is it converting it to something, or do you have any idea how that works?
It converts. So it allows you to upload an HEIC, so from an iPhone, from a Mac, and then it will convert it to a JPEG. It is dependent on the host having the necessary PHP or whatever.
Some sort of processing
process, right?
Or something or other. Yeah,
exactly. But the idea is that it just saves you the step. You upload it and then it converts it to JPEG.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Hopefully we'll show an example of that too. So 2025 has a lot in it. I don't know if Peter, do you want to start there, or do you want to do something? So do you want to do the zoom out thing first?
Yeah, exactly. And I want to. It's funny because zoom out is something that was covered a lot, and you're right, Ray. Just to kind of tag on what you already mentioned, that watching a lot of demos on this and all, you get a lot of comments about quality of life, even things that some aren't covering, some are. Something you showed in the list, I'm going, geez, I'm not even sure I saw that, because I was looking at a whole bunch of other lists, and I'll show you the different files and different sources where I got the information. But it is kind of interesting to see what is more developer specific versus user specific, and there's a lot of things that are also, and Ray, I think you're going to be talking a little bit about some of this stuff on what we're building on, like everything from the API, the developer-y stuff that will allow theme developers and plugin developers to deliver more robust things. And the 2025 theme, which we can jump right into, and then I can show you.
Do you want to go to that? Well, if you do that one, how about you can do that with the zoom.
Want to do the zoom out? Yeah,
do the zoom out thing first. So 2025, I think we can tackle together, because
I think
that one crosses both.
Yeah, exactly. So what I have is this big old. I'm going to go back and forth between the actual page document itself on the editing screen, versus, what these are all kind of my notes and things like this to cover. And at the end, I can even show you some behind the scenes in terms of like even using AI to analyze stuff. I did some really neat things that I think might be of interest to some folks on how to get a bunch of info and then pull it together using the tools that we have available to us. So, and one of the things too, I want to make sure to ask a question is, if people too, we ask, but what theme are you using? And are there any features of 6.7 that you may have heard about that you're not sure about, or is this kind of the first thing that you're looking at in terms of the new release? But I'm always curious what theme, if you know.
You put it in the chat. You put it in the chat.
Yeah,
We'll
put it in the chat. So just to get a feel for how many people are using a classic theme versus a block theme, because so many of these features as we keep going forward are block theme specific. We've talked about that a lot. I'll come back to like where I got the source documents, the videos, things like that. But yeah, the zoom out, there's a good simple video by Ann McCarthy that I've got a link to that when I share this, she kind of walks through these things. But here's on the page itself. So here I am now editing a page. This is editing a page not through the site editor, which you can also do, and that gives you more options, but also causes confusions in a lot of ways. But just going through by going here, right, in normal pages, and then I'm going to sort these by, here's my WordPress demo. This is the page we're working on right now. And what is new is this little zoom in, zoom out icon up here, which also works in another way, which I'll show right now, and I'll do it right on this page. It's when you're zooming out, what it's doing is it's giving you sort of a zoomed out bird's eye view of the page, right? So here's zoomed in, I'm editing all the blocks. But one of the things that's interesting about this is once you start bringing patterns in, you can see how those patterns work together. Now, this toggle will zoom in, zoom out, but also if I go here and I want to add a pattern, it will automatically go into zoom out mode. And what also is kind of nice that has a quality of life kind of thing. It used to be that if you clicked on the pattern, that it would open up this window where you could see the previews of the patterns. And now this is running the 2025 theme, which means we're looking at all the many 2025 theme patterns that are included. But it opens it up not over your content, which is if we go back to the 6.6 version, when you open up these preview windows, it actually lays on top of your content versus right now it moves next to it. And also if you close this and then say you're looking at your block options here, when you go to add a pattern, for example, and then you go to show them, it will close that so that you have enough room to see. Now, what the zoom out, so that automatically happens when you go to add a pattern, because what the zoom out then allows you to do is when you start bringing in patterns, you can see them and how they work together. And in fact, when once you're in this mode, you're not editing. I'm clicking on the word stories here. You're not editing that. You're looking at these sections that you're stacking in this zoomed out mode. If I close this, I'll go back to regular editor. Just a simple thing, if you double click on it, it will go back. Now it's gigantic because I don't have these options here or my add section here. Let's go back to patterns. A weird little thing, weird to me, but it may be useful as certain themes do, is in the zoom out mode, when you have a pattern, dependent on the theme and dependent on how they develop the pattern, there's a shuffle button. So as you click this, you can literally bring in different patterns. And you say, well, that's kind of a weird thing to do. What's the value of that? Well, it would be the one thing I think it's if you're looking at just the say the isn't that funny? If I add this here, now I should be shuffling just the things that are in that list. So I'm not looking at all the other, header, footer, call to action. I'm just saying, you know what? I like the way this one works versus the way something else worked. It's an interesting way of designing things. And then the zoom out mode gives you sort of that bigger picture. And then even the controls for the blocks that you're normally used to, where if you're highlighting this and you want to, boy, this is big. Let me close this. Let me go back to zoom mode. Oop. Let me go back to zoom mode. Now, what I can do, see, isn't this interesting, right? Where's my up and down arrow?
If you click on it, so you're zoomed out.
Yeah.
There it is, an upper.
But this is how you can move things up and down.
Yeah.
Although it's not.
It's the same. I think you have a section that's the same.
Could be.
Well, so let me throw in something too. So if you show your list view, so here's the thing too. We talk about sections, which is a conceptual thing. What we're really talking about is groups.
Yeah.
So the zoom level really is allowing you to look at your page in terms of groups and move chunks of your page, really the groups, again, in sort of like other web design word, we call it sections. If you're using Elementor or a page builder, sometimes they'll call it sections too. So it's allowing you to work at your page, not just zoomed out, but also move big chunks, big sections with those controls that Peter was showing. But one of the problems is if your page is like the one that you're showing, they're not grouped together, you can't move them. The whole bottom part is just, they're individual, so it doesn't really buy you much.
I'm going to delete this and add it again and see what happened. Also, one of the things to pay attention to is how much happens in the browser. And you can get situations where you get hung up because your browser, maybe I've got too many. I closed a bunch of Chrome extensions, for example, because sometimes I find that you run into some of these issues. But like if I do here,
and you're doing this on your own test site. I was going to say just back to the side of the playground. I think I found that's one issue, that because this UI now is becoming more rich / responsive, the WordPress admin, it definitely does take a bit more resources from your browser. So it can cause some issues.
I like to show people, if they don't know how you can transform something. I entered this as a paragraph, and now if I want to take this and make it a heading, it's just a matter of clicking that as opposed to having to insert a heading block and then edit it. You can just put in everything as a paragraph and then start turning things into lists and stuff like that. Let me go from here real quick, again to patterns. And I'm down here. And if I go to, let's just go to something, right? If I add this, and then now my plus is below, I can potentially add a featured area. I don't want to get something so big. What I did was I entered the same one twice, and I was just shifting them. You couldn't see the same one. So now these are there, and again, I'm in zoomed out mode. And if I want to change the order, right, I'm just clicking just like you do with blocks. So now
you can drag too. If you grab
drag. So grab that same drag and drop. I actually wish you could zoom out even further.
I agree.
Because especially this theme, these patterns are real big. Now, real quick, and I should. This is my other kind of sister site to where I test the classic themes versus the beta themes, and I didn't upgrade this yet because I wanted to do it here live because I'm a silly person. Let's see what happens. Just so that you can see what happens when you do an upgrade. So I go to dashboard, it says I need to do an update. I'm updating now to 6.7. It goes through everything was successful. And then this is where you will drop into your the about.php screen, which shows you basically, Ray, what you had shown earlier.
Mhm.
Although I wonder, I had put in a request to say, if you're using a classic theme, I wanted them to make this more customized to classic themes. I'm not sure if they did. But here's where it gets a little interesting. So now I'm going to go to that same page. I have the same copy, and I'm going to edit that. So now I'm running a classic theme. Right now it's running Cadence. The zoom out is there.
Mhm.
Fantastic. It may not always be there. And one of the biggest culprits is if you have anything running, and right now I think I turned off the plugin. Anything with a meta box can interfere with the way this framing works. So it's a curious thing that happens, and I think it happens even more specifically with classic themes. I haven't tested it to say, but because I know block themes handle meta boxes differently. In fact, we'll talk about that a little bit.
And Sue was saying also in the chat, the Grammarly's extension, I guess, sometimes can mess with the WordPress backend too.
Yeah. So what that does is it breaks this zoom feature. You literally don't see. When I had, let me save this. When I had, if you indulge me, because again, there's not a million things to go over. So I like to show kind of the errors that I ran into. Where, oh, I guess I don't have it loaded here now. I like Slim SEO. We like SEO Press as our SEO choices. Many people, of course, like Yoast and Rank Math. Slim SEO does what I need it to do. Let's see if they fixed it. I actually contacted them about this, but come to find out it was a here humble little me saying, hey, I found a little issue that you're running into, and come to find out it's a big known issue that ran into a number of things. So now I have Slim SEO running. Good. Okay, I do see the zoom in zoom out that wasn't working. I might as well jump into one quick thing. The way 6.7 handles meta boxes is different, and if you notice, normally meta boxes kind of you have to scroll all the way down. Now it sits in the window and you can change the size. I don't know if you've tried that.
No, I saw it mentioned. Yeah, I didn't notice.
This was a discovery today. I didn't realize, but and it works for both classic and block themes as far as I know. But I'm happy to see in a classic theme with meta boxes, I can say, okay, let's get it out of the way. Because actually I run sometimes, the meta boxes get in the way. The flip side is scrolling down a long page to get to them.
Right.
But they're basically made sticky.
It's like a drawer. Yeah, it's a drawer. I wonder, can you change that? I wonder if you can hide that in the in your preferences or not.
I don't know. I don't know. All right. You said preferences. Can I show one other quick thing?
Yeah.
All right. So here we go. I go to, if I've got pages open and I say I want to add a new page.
Yeah, I think I know what you're going to show.
Yeah. Were you going to show this?
Yeah, no, that's okay.
All right. So you open up a new page and you get into this, hey, you want to pick from a pattern. Well, maybe you don't want to have that as your default action where you start building your page from your pattern. If you go to the three dots and go to preferences, there is a toggle for show starter patterns. Turn that off.
Yay.
Yeah. And so now if I were to go back to pages and go
that saves it, my understanding from what I read too, that saves it across the site basically. So not just as one page. Once you start creating new pages, it'll remember.
Yeah, that preferences box covers kind of your editor interface, even for posts and pages. Although but now I just open up to add a new page, and now I'm not seeing that big, hey, start a pattern. I can always go add a pattern and then get all my choices and things like that. But instead of getting that big box over it and making me and everyone else have to close it, now you could just set it as a preference not to do that. All right, Ray, can I hand it back to you?
Yeah, let me take it over again.
And if any questions,
and I'm probably going to show Zoom at some point too when I'm showing the back end site editor. So I'm going to skip the custom blocks thing until maybe close to last because there's some funniness in
Okay.
that. I'm going to start with the 2025 theme, and Peter's already you showed that, right? That was the theme that you were working on.
I was working in 2025 on
Yeah.
my
Okay.
blog.
Cool. So I also so again for people who are kind of new when we're doing these demos. There's a couple ways you can do this. So especially if you want to play around with features in WordPress, probably the safest way to do it is this thing called Playground, wordpress.org/playground. And you can get to it from, oh, where is it? Is it under extend? I forget. If you just search for WordPress Playground, if someone doesn't mind putting that into the chat as well. So what I'm going to do, because some of these changes are subtle, so I'm going to have an old version of WordPress. So here I'm going to start so what Playground basically is doing is it's starting up an instance of WordPress in my browser, a temporary instance, a playground, a sandbox, whatever you want to call it. And the cool thing about this, though, is you can control, if you go to this little gear icon, when it creates one for you, it's basically throwaway. You can say which version of WordPress do you want. It defaults to the old, the newest one, but I can say I want 6.6. I also want the network access because that allows me to put in plugins if I need them. So I'm just going to reset this tab. So I want one tab with the old version 6.6, and then I've got my normal bloated demo site here with 6.7. So I also, just to kind of show where we're at, this site has the 2025 theme is my active theme. And this guy, I believe by default is it's 2024, as you can see. So I'm going to show a couple of things about site editing that have changed. And so again, they're kind of subtle, so that's why I think it's nice to have both these side by side. So I'll do a little bit of that. We'll also talk about 2025 as part of that. I'll cover some parts, and then Peter, jump in, or if you want to cover some parts of 2025 as well, just let me know. So from a site editing standpoint, so when I say site editing, not every theme is a block-enabled theme or a theme that kind of supports the site editor. So how can you tell? One way is like for the 2025 theme, if you customize it, there's two ways to get into this. If you're on this appearance themes, you can click the customizer or click editor. I'll just go through customize. It opens up this view, kind of what they call like a data view. So this view, just again, for folks who are kind of either newer to WordPress, today, this view is primarily for editing parts of your site beyond a specific post or page. You still use the regular today. You use this regular WordPress admin screen to do things like install plugins, create posts, create pages, all that kind of stuff. This thing, if you've never seen this before, today it's kind of being used only for site things like your headers, footers, navigation bars, stuff that's a little bit broader than a specific page. But as we've heard from folks who've been keeping up with WordPress news and changes, it seems like this is becoming more of the future admin look for WordPress. So someday, don't be surprised. I would be surprised by the end of next year, quite frankly, if this is pretty drastically gone and is into this. Again, we don't know when that's going to happen, but everything seems to say that. So some of the things I'm going to show, even though they're site editor things, pay attention. don't tune out, because these may be things that affect the rest of your WordPress backend experience in the near future. So again, from a site standpoint, let me show, a couple of things are fairly subtle. And in fact, I have to keep referring back to this. They're so subtle. So for example, so refined page views in the site editor. So what does that mean? So one thing they've already done in this is you have the ability to actually see your pages in here. So not just patterns, not just headers, navigation stuff. You can actually see pages. You can't see posts in here yet. It's a little funny. But you could see them here before. So this is WordPress 6.6, and this is, again, the 2024 theme, which also was a block-enabled theme. So just some of these things, like I said, are rather subtle. So if I'm looking at pages in 2024, and again, this is running that playground, so far it looks exactly the same, right? You're like, wait a minute, you're seeing pages here. What's the difference? Very subtle. There's a gear, right? So one option is, and I think they've done this across the UI in 2025. You'll see more examples of this later. I think they've tried to clean up the UI language in WordPress. So that's, if you're looking for something that used to be, in this case, oh, it used to be the three dots, or used to be this, slider thing, whatever the heck that icon is, things may have changed a bit more. So in the new world in 6.7, you can filter. So let's say these pages, I just want to filter them on author. So I can put in more criteria in here. I can change my view. So I want to change it to, let's say, grid view. I want to look at everything in a grid view, which you could do. Again, that's what I'm saying. Like, this isn't drastic, because previously here I could do my layout, but you see how this layout was a little bit different. It was a pop-up menu, which then led you to something else. So in some ways they've streamlined it. It's very subtle. So in here I was also able to change it to grid view. So in the end, the results are fairly similar, but now they do give you some more control. So, not only am I seeing a grid view, and again, because these are pages, normally this would show a preview of your featured image. Pages, most people don't generally put a featured image on a page. What I can do are certain things here, like let's say I want to change this preview size. So let's say I wanted to make it bigger. So I want to have, let's make it go on, drag. Let's see, maybe it's, there we go. So I want to see a bigger preview. So I can click on this, and you're not hearing my browser's chugging a little bit because I'm recording on Zoom too.
Yeah.
But I can change the order, so I can change sort. I can say, let's say I don't want to see the author because these are pages, so who cares? This is another subtle, silly thing, but the hiding the author, it's the eyeball, so it's visible. You close it. Oh, it's a closed eyelid. Whereas in the past, literally,
Right.
that's here. I think you were able to do. Yeah, I could just uncheck things. So now it's it's visible all the time. So I think they've gone with this design language and making things, I don't know, apparently, more
Cute.
intuitive, cute, more intuitive.
Yeah.
So, but again, this seems a little bit funny, like, who cares? But think about this long term. This may be the view that we'll see in the future for posts or other things, plugins, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know when that's going to happen. So that's one of the big changes here. It's just literally, this is, for all the data views, they've added like this, it's the gear instead of something else. Oh, you can change the preview size. You can add, that kind of stuff. Oh, you could also, I think, so let's say I want to see discussion. Now it pops up here. I think there was something in here too. I could be wrong. I thought you can drag these as well too. No, I guess you can't. I thought there was an option that can move these around. Maybe that's in the list view. Let me just try this in a second. No, that might be elsewhere. There's another place, I think, where you can change those filter options. So that's one of the big subtle subtle changes, is those filtering options. I'll show another thing that changed in the site editor, and then I'll pass it back to Peter for some more stuff. So in the site editor, and this is really, it's subtle, but I guess some people wanted this, is the ability to add a background image to your site. Whatever, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a branding thing and you want, or stylistically you want something that you want as a background image. So in the past, believe it or not, if you went to styles, so this is the old 6.6. And if there's any questions that pop up to you, Peter, if I'm not saying anything, let me know.
Now, Sue just made a comment, circa 1998.
That's what I thought. Wait till you see what I picked too. So here's the old 2024. If you went to styles, you could change things. Again, these are site-wide styles. So if you're not used to using the site editor, this style book is showing you all the styles for your site, which is a great way for people who aren't familiar with like web design. If you just sort of tinker with websites, it is a good starting point to think about a style for your whole site, and then set your font styles, your colors, all that kind of stuff at a site level. So you're not tinkering with everything as you're building pages. That's a great thing. And WordPress exposes that a bit more now in core. But one thing they didn't allow you, so previously you were able to change things like, typography across the site, colors, et cetera, et cetera. But one new thing they've given you the option to do, apparently people are clamoring for it, is the ability to now add a background to your site. So this is my silly test site. So let's say I want to add a background image, and I think I've already got a goofy one in my media library. Do I have one, or did I delete? Well, I could do this. I thought I had something even worse than this, but so now what it's going to do? Hey, look at that! Isn't that great? So it's doing its tiled and everything, and you can't you can't really control it more beyond that. So literally that's, and if I save this, just to glutton for punishment, I'll show you, here's what the site looks like now. And this is everywhere. Oh, isn't that cute?
That's
Every
great.
page is going to have that. So imagine, snow, I had snowflakes, those kind of things. So that's one of the changes. So with that, people are clamoring for that ability. So there's a couple more things with styles with fonts at the site level, but I'll pause there and I'll switch it back to you, Peter, if there's
Yeah.
other stuff.
Yeah, and we'll come back to the, I think, what they've added in styling in 6.7 with themes that you now don't have to do any coding, right? So the font management, the color management.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you're gonna cover that. If you don't, I'll cover one thing on, they call it fluid fonts. So
Yeah, I wasn't going to go too much into it, but we can tag team
if you don't, I can cover that piece. I can show some behind the scenes stuff on it too. So
okay. Let me oh, I did something now where all my windows change shape. Isn't that nice? Okay. There we go.
and I'm gonna get rid of that background image while you're doing it.
All right. So we talked about zoom out. I talked about meta boxes. I think related to what you're talking, you let me know what you want to know. More design tools across more blocks, the simplified query loop. What feels good for doing next?
How about some of the stuff they've added? I know more styling for
Yeah.
certain blocks, right? So certain block, I think, was it the group blocks, those kind of things, or
Yes. So they did. And this is one of those things where to go through each one of those is a challenge.
yeah, maybe just pick one to
Yeah. But I do have a very interesting resource here. So and I'll make this available also on our website. But the roster of design tools per block. So this is Birgit Polyhart, who's very involved and came up through Learn and now works for Automatic and all. She created this document, which I will open up right now, which is the overview of trying to keep track of where they're bringing more and more of these design features in. So if we come at it, so what we're looking at are, when we're talking about those design features, align, typography, color, dimension, border layout, gradient, duotone, shadow, background image, pattern override. So your borders, your rounded corners, all of the things that are about the imaging, even the spaces. So yeah, the dimension, that's your padding, margin, things like that. They're trickling into more and more blocks. Now, to see how they're trickling, this is the table of all blocks. And if you go to that link and mouse over it, we'll get all of the things and then which blocks they work in. So you can see where, if you were looking at the column block, right? So now, because one of the things that has been added to the column block is border. Oh, I wonder if this is color coded to say this is new, but the border and radius. So you can now, I can show that you can have a column inside a columns block, and now you can put a border around it and you can make it rounded corners, things like that. So it's all of these design features that are becoming more and more available in blocks. And just FYI, not 100% always available for using a classic theme. Depends on the theme developer, whether they are enabling a lot of these things. They may have blocks that already do this. They may have reasons to not do it, or they just didn't enable that. Whatever magic sauce has to make some of these things work. Your mileage may vary depending on whether you're using a block theme or a classic theme. And again, the difference being the block theme using the site editor, the full site editor, if you will, having all of the things that Ray was showing with the data views, which another name I don't like. It's like the admin list and
patterns.
Yeah, all the different things that get repetitive. But this kind of gives you a view as to what what's now available. It really is going to come down to experimenting. But the idea that you can come in here and let's see, if we wanted to do, say I wanted to make all of this, I want to group all of this. I keep the toolbar on the
Mhm.
block, but there's sometimes it does just get in the way. Like right now. So if I do that,
That's why the list view is still my favorite thing to keep.
yeah. And I don't know why I'm not there because it is my favorite. It's kind of like trying to do some of these things there is pointless.
Mhm.
So if I grab this to not that far. I wonder there. It's overthinking, but now that I've grabbed these, not all that many. But now if I group these, so now all of those things are in a group block. The group block has, if I go to, so now I'm looking at the group block, and now I'm looking at the options for the group block. And now this is something that's kind of interesting. The styling that happens that might be packed with a theme. It's hard to, Ray, I don't know how we would communicate that, but if the theme developer had put some styling in
Mm.
and styling variations for a group block, you would have those options. If they didn't, you wouldn't see this. 2025 is chock full of this stuff. So but let's just say I want to come down and I want to give it a border. So now that group block has a border. Um, your dimensions, and if you're not sure what you get when you click on those, your dimensions are padding margin, block spacing. So maybe I want to increase the padding on both the top and sides. Give it a color, like a light color background. But like one of the things that they added was under border and shadow. So now if I turn that on, so I don't see that option because go to the preferences and now turn on so I can now see that. So now I can this is a new thing that's been added, right? So putting a drop shadow on a group block, new feature in 6.7. So that's an example of now, I'm now highlighting this area by doing the things that I did. Give it a border, but now maybe you have a design style where you like to use shadows. So the same type of thing. Maybe you're doing. This is one demo that I've seen a lot. So in this case, I'm going to do buttons. But now I have, so the buttons block, you can put multiple buttons, but you can now design individual buttons by, again, coming over here and saying, I want the background to be that same color. I want my text to be the dark color. Although interesting, oh no, it's not faded. It's just, maybe I want it larger, so I'm adding the text. But here's the new things like adding a border of a certain size, and what you could do is individually. So if you have a number of buttons and you want to color one differently in that set of buttons, you have button level control. If I want to change the radius of that, so it's these types of things that are getting added. Putting a background image, and it's a background image on a quote. It's kind of, I guess that would be an interesting thing. It's almost like doing like a cover block where you could put an image, but maybe add a quote and the background picture is inspirational to what the quote is saying, or the picture of the person or something like that. So that didn't exist before. Now you can put a background image on a quote. So
I think my feeling with this stuff, we talked about this before, is it's good, in my opinion, it's good because in the sense that you're allowing people to have more control of styling. Because all these options that like the Peter's showing, I mean, you could always do them behind the ones that weren't exposed for the user interface. You always could do them through CSS, but then obviously it was tough for people who don't know CSS. My
right.
concern with this is, there was this kind of backlash against the page builders. I'm thinking of the Divis and Elementors and things like that, because the
Right.
page builders for folks who are using a page builder like one of those, they basically expose everything, almost every single CSS attribute you could ever use for every single element out there, which is great in terms of power, but from it's definitely confusing, I think, for beginners because you can really, make some ugly looking sites. You can
Yeah.
get overwhelmed with your options and things. So I'm curious to see what this is going to look like a year down the road. Like, do they stop at these? That list you showed, Peter.
Yeah.
And this is just me editorializing. Do they stop at like the top 20% of things that people asked for,
Right.
or do they go like the page builders and say, "I'm gonna give you everything"?
Yeah. It's kind of like, hey, if I offer you a border with a radius and all, why, put it on any block you want. There are some interesting applications like the list block, which so a list item, you have individual list item control where now you have dimensions, you have colors, things like that. I just, while you were talking, put a border around it. Maybe you are again turning on that three dots that tells you that there's other things. If you don't see, hey, I saw them demonstrate something, but maybe you want to like, circle something in a list, that type of thing. Now you can do that in a list block because you have these features. George is asking a question.
Yeah, to that point about, should they go for more or should they go for less? On our side, about 3 years ago, we did our first blocks-based, Gutenberg-driven site deployment for a commercial client. Having spent the previous several years working within builders sort of exclusively, which, gives us a lot of speed and consistency, right? The guys that work for me, we know what we can do. We know how to do it. I can give them commands and know that they're not going to run it through, some crazy element or CSS, process. They're going to use the given options to create a result that's consistent and repeatable and manageable by an end user, even though oftentimes the end users don't use them. And so when I see this, to that point, right, we attempted to deploy this commercial site. We got about 80, maybe 82% of the way there, and we had to stop after about 2.5, 3 weeks of, sort of periodic, at the end of the day, we're all working on it. And we had to rebuild it in our builder. It took us about 2 days and we were done. And our assessment at the time was that it wasn't ready yet. Mm-hmm. And about 6 to 9 months ago, we did the same thing. And we were caught in here on, sort of inconsistent application of modifiers and configuration elements and the fact that we would want to put something in the background, right? Like perhaps we want to have, we want to do an effect that isn't really readily available through CSS. It would be better just to have a solid image for any number of random reasons, right? We were already using a color. We want to layer things in a certain way. And we just couldn't manifest it quickly enough and consistently enough. Each of the blocks seemed to be different. And so looking at what I'm seeing here today, it's encouraging in the context of it's moving towards something that it feels like we can use commercially because those elements are accessible. And I want all of it there, right? I want every modifier that you have in something like a Divi or an Elementor or a Beaver builder presented in a consistent and coherent fashion within this environment. And I think that's what they're trying to build to compete against places like Wix, but I see what you're saying where the more they cater to users like us, the greater the risk that a simple user or someone who has low objectives, they're going to break something or have too many choices, and that's going to be stressful for them.
Yeah.
Well, and I think in the past, probably what that challenge you faced. I'm curious if some of those things were like if they were design things that sort of were your obstacles. But in the past, the solution would have been either CSS, knowing enough CSS to change all these things, or find a block package that has the additional things exposed to you, like the cadence blocks, for example, they have a lot more of these properties. At least initially, they had them all exposed to you, so you could do a lot more with them. So you were able to sort of like mix and match powerful blocks like that with the simple core blocks. And that was sort of it wasn't a great, with a great solution, maybe not, but at least it kept the core blocks simple. And I'm just throwing out there as like, I'm curious what it's going to be like. Are the core blocks going to get too confusing for beginners, in a year or so, because they're going to have every option exposed. So that's why I think page builders are very, beginners I've spoken to, they are very confusing. They're like, what do I do?
There's one thing that I think is going to be a very interesting thing for people who deliver websites to other people or who design themes, which is, and what's being built in that when this like 6.7 is being presented, well, there's a lot of it's on the developer side, but that ability, while I think we're going to show what's moved out of having to go into core code, like there's this big file called theme.json that allows you to control a lot of things, and now you can do that just through the GUI interface, right, through clicking on things, which for a lot of us that's fantastic, like managing fonts and things like that. Ray, I think you might want to, if you're not showing that, we can work that out together.
Gotcha.
But the other thing that's kind of really interesting is having that control. So people who develop websites for clients, there's often the I don't let them touch anything. And it's like, right, it's an interesting approach. I mean, it gets stated a certain way, but where things are getting really interesting is how you can deliver a site that now you have control over which ones of these things you're turning on or turning off. And you would have control over like this idea of what 2025 is doing, where you drop something in and then it gives you all these style variations. Well, you might go through a branding exercise with a client, and all your variations to your patterns and things like that would all fit within the realm of what's acceptable under the brand standards, which again now gives you, they have options for changing things within a predefined,
which is kind of what you had showed quickly, Peter, like the 2025 styles that, remember, it gave you like those, oh, here's the different kind of colors for things. You're right. So you're limiting the choice a bit, but you're giving it within some like predefined sets. Yeah. So I'm just, again, I don't want to derail us too much, but I think it's a curious thing to see where, because those of us who've been with Gutenberg from the beginning, where it was really, it was extremely bare bones. I've sort of reached the point in the last year where I'm like, it's good enough for me for building, not the super complex sites, but certainly building most, average kind of sites. And on occasion when I need that something more powerful, that's when I'll use a different kind of block. I'll use something like Cadence or something else to fix it. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it keeps going.
So all of these options that are in this theme are for people who are building a blog and go, oh, I like the green on green or whatever, that type of thing. But if you were delivering this to a client, you wouldn't have all of these variations in there. You would have styles, and something that I'm intrigued by, but not doing that right, not having that need right now. But this idea that your patterns can have variations, but your variations are what you have defined, so that again, it's only acceptable versus the crazy, pinks and golds and other WordPress theme default theme colors that you wouldn't necessarily use on a commercial site.
For us in a publishing environment, when we're delivering to a client, typically what we end up doing is using custom post types to structure what and where they can roll, because a lot of times there's institutional knowledge that doesn't get passed along. There's an intern or a marketing assistant who handles the website, and you get them up to speed on what it is, and then they leave. New opportunity, the new person comes in and they have a different idea of how they want to do it, and they break things or change things, and you get this sort of drift in WordPress and e-commerce and other things like that, where it's just, there's no messaging consistency. And so we just lock that stuff down. They can add whatever content they want, but they don't control the page that they're pushing it into, which also means that it's a lot easier to convert it to something else. You can take the site in its current context and extract it through an export, and then put it back together or send it off to a CSV file and let them manage things there, and then do a hygiene process to bring it back in. It would be interesting to see the process of locking down the editor here to only support a limited number of patterns and design routines, so that you could have a similar kind of handoff experience. That would be something that would be.
I'll tell you what, during Ray, when you take over at one point, I'm going to try to find, I know that Nick Diego did a very specific presentation on locking down or having, curating the editor process, and that's going to keep evolving too. But for clients that does just those things, is go, you know what, they don't need to see these blocks. The idea that you would have patterns with the variable, I can't even remember what that's called now.
Yeah, I forget. They changed the name of that.
Yeah, but the
Patterns with overrides.
The pattern overrides, right?
Yeah.
So you have something that's locked in, except for the content. You want to change the headline, the paragraph, and things like that, which is another way to say, no, put your content, but again, in this predefined, we all agreed, we locked it in. You paid me to come up with a design that matches your branding that we've all agreed to, and you're using my expertise. So here's where you can modify the content. Here are your options for those patterns. That's where I think,
yeah, it's the best
should embrace. Do you want me to get this over to you?
Yeah, I can take it back. Let me show. I'll show a couple things. Give you a little break for a second. I'll show a couple things on fonts. I won't spend a lot of time on the font selection thing. So if there's stuff that you think is worth calling out, Peter, let me know. But so this is all right. So here we are. I'm gonna reset myself. I'm back on the 2025 theme, and again, I'm in the site editor now. So one thing that's yeah, I don't want to save those changes. Let me go back. So I went to this, appearance editor, and under styles, that's where it is. It's under styles. So this was all previously available, the colors, the palettes, etc. So again, sometimes it's good to look at these things side by side. So here we go. So this was previously available in 6.6. The thing that was not available immediately from at least this view, this data view, was typography. So if I go, there's two, I can either edit it here, so typography really means a couple of things. It means fonts, so font families. So, if you want Lucinda, Lato, whatever, all these different kind of Times New Roman, etc. That's one part of it. But then also the size and other kind of characteristics of a font. So one of the things that they did add the ability to do, which I don't think, let me double check this. Yeah, so previously, if you wanted to, and maybe this was in 6.6, if you wanted to add, yeah, you could. So this was in 6.6, I believe, right? That you were able to actually upload or install additional fonts. So you could connect, I'm not going to do it here, but you can connect to Google Fonts, you could pull in additional fonts. So that's been around, I think, since at least 6.6. The piece that changed regarding fonts, so probably at least the piece that I'm going to cover that's more significant, is this idea of font size presets. So where you'll see this on your site, and this was something you could see even back in 6.6, is let's say I can go edit this guy. Oh no, let me just go to a page here in 6.6. So again, this is the old one. I'll add a test page or something. So if I'm adding a paragraph or anything that has text, something like this, you can see this typography. So these defaults, a small, medium, large, extra large, et cetera, et cetera. In the past, you did not have the ability to really manipulate these because these were set by your theme, or do some additional kind of neat stuff. So that's one big thing that got added in 6.7. So let me show you what I mean by that. So the presets that come with this theme, this is the 2025 theme, are small, medium, large, extra large, and extra, extra large. And if you're not familiar with these units, REMs are part of what was called responsive web design. So everyone's familiar with pixels, So one REM is, I think, generally 16 pixels. I think is the default REM size for a browser. So basically what this means is medium is 16 pixels. Large is 1.38 times 16 pixels. I don't know, do the math, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of just general responsive website design of using a unit that can change. It's saying, hey, this thing it's not a fixed pixel size. What they've added, though, the additional neat piece to this, and sorry, let me move my Zoom window because I don't think I could see. Okay. The thing they've added, first off, is the ability to create your own additional one. So let's say small isn't small enough. For my use case here, I want to have something even smaller. So I can add a new font. And let's say I want to make this super small. So I'm going to call this 8 pixels. I'll talk about fluid typography in a minute. I'm going to say, actually, no, I do want to say, let's make this custom. So the smallest this thing can get as the screen shrinks, let's say I want it to go from 6 to 8 pixels. So it can get really, really small all the way up to, 8 pixels. And I'm going to change the name of this over here. And I'm going to call this XS, extra small. So now I've saved this, and as soon as you do a save, because this is a site-wide setting, I have to save twice. And on this site, now if I go to one of my pages here, oh God, I saw the background. Sorry. Like, let me get rid of those. Sorry.
Try not to say anything.
Oh gosh, reset all. That's how you get rid of it. Please. There we go. Whew, that's gonna be a headache. So if I go back to a page, and I can actually add a page from here, but I kind of still don't like doing it from there. I'll add another page and just whatever, I call it a test or something. I gotta turn that dumb thing off too. But now you can see one of my options for font size is under, I can do extra small for this one, which looks really, really tiny. And let's say this guy is medium. Yeah, sorry, this one we'll say is going to be regular medium. Let's say he's going to be, let's say medium. And so I'm just going to publish this so I can show you what's happening with the that other option about the, like, how it stretches and changes. So first off, I had the ability to create my own custom size. That's one new thing, but also this idea of I don't know if they call it elastic. Was that what they call it? Elastic sizing, or that's the kind of the term I think they're using. So what does that mean? I'm doing this in Inspector, so you can kind of, hopefully see. I'm gonna have to move myself around. But you see by default, this may be a little bit hard to see, but I have the medium text selected. So the medium font size is 18 pixels by default. And then my font, extra small, by default is 8 pixels. But as I move, you look at mine, as I move my screen and make it smaller and smaller and smaller, you can see the font size is changing, but it has a limit, it has a lower limit of 6 pixels. That's as small as it's going to get. And the same thing for this other one, this guy, and you can see it's just adding a class to the end of it. So he starts off as 18 pixels, and he has a lower limit as well. I think his low limit is 16. Yeah, so it's 1 rem. So that's like that's what they mean by the elasticity to it. So you're able to define not only kind of a variable unit of measure, that's what rems are, but you're also able to say how you want that thing to scale as they're moving the screen around. So that's a real neat thing. First off, back to your, if you're the website developer, you're able to kind of control people who create content on your site. You give them a fixed limit as opposed to everyone having to say 6 pixels, 8 pixels, whatever. You've defined that range. But also, that by defining it as those elastic things, it's able to scale depending on the device that you're looking at. So I think that's a cool one. That's actually a really nice feature that they've added in. Normally, you'd have to do that previously with CSS, but now it's kind of built. You see they've added class. There's no magic. There's a class to this that's basically doing the CSS for you. Any questions on that? Did anything pop up in the chat on that one, Peter, that you can see?
No, not specifically. Jim saying fluid typography.
Fluid, I'm sorry. Yeah, fluid. I could put in elastic.
And there's
fluid.
a general question that we can address now.
I'll show one last quick thing on the site editor, and I'll hand it back to Peter. So the view, the zoom out also works in the site editor too. So if you zoom out, it now shows you, because I'm in a site editor view for something, it's showing the header and footer, et cetera, et cetera. So I can now see the full site on the page. And if there's a bigger page, I can click around it as well. That's just another nice thing that zoom out feature is elsewhere.
Yeah. Again, they keep referring to quality of life improvements that are even something with the save publish button not moving, although I don't know.
Yeah, I saw it. Can I show one last quick thing on patterns? And this people may not.
I did want you to show one other thing. On the fonts, which was Google Fonts through the interface.
I think. Show me that again. Sorry, let me move my thing around. I thought that was there before.
Yeah, it wasn't as easy as this. So if you go to the slider things next to fonts,
Yeah, there we go. Yep, sorry, I had to move my zoom around. Yep.
okay, so now you can see it's organized which fonts come with your theme,
Yeah.
which fonts are custom. Now, if you wanted to, you can upload fonts, or if you won't go to install fonts,
Yep.
this are all the Google fonts.
Oh, okay. So, I was showing on, I'm sorry, I was showing on 6.6 before, and it still had me like connect it. I had to connect it to Google Fonts. Okay, so now it's more, it brings them in for you
Yeah,
initially.
it's
Oh,
built
okay.
in. It's nice. And then when you can select an entire font family with one click. Again, those little types of
Right.
things.
Right. Select all. Okay,
Select
cool. Yeah,
all.
you're right. Before it was a little bit of it was a little clunkier.
Yeah, just a little simple way of, yeah, and even before that, right? You were going into theme JSON and
Right.
saying, you were using code, but so
Let me show one last thing, and I'll hand it over to you, Peter, again, of just back to the back to the themes. So there's a lot of people, myself included, I'll admit, I'm cynical enough. When I see one of these new WordPress themes, I'm like, it's fun to play with, but am I ever really going to build a site with it? Most likely not. So 2025 is a minimalist theme, in my opinion, probably too minimalist for many things, but for bloggers who want that kind of look, that's probably who's most going to use it out of the box.
yeah.
But I would say one nice thing that 2025 especially has included, and don't overlook this, is the patterns. So, and again, don't forget that, so 2025 has 81 patterns included in it. Actually, it's probably a little bit less because I think I have some of my own. This is my demo site that I've used for a million different things. So you may want to explore, because 2025 gets installed by default anyway. You may want to just turn it on like in a test site someplace down your live site and take a look at some of these patterns. I really wish there was a better, you could view them all from here. But one thing that kind of drives me nuts is that if you go to like WordPress.org,
Yeah.
if you go to WordPress.org and if you go to the patterns thing, they're not in here. Like, why wouldn't they be in here? Like,
Oh, right.
it's just weird. It's like it's their own theme, but they don't even showcase them in the patterns directory. But anyway, so if you find a pattern that you like, so let me pick on one. Was under featured, for example. Let's say this guy, the Instagram grid. Is that a good one? Yeah. Let's do this one. Overlapping images and paragraph. If I like this pattern, but I don't want to use this theme, you can still do that with your own thing. Meaning, don't forget, patterns are just basically templates of blocks. So you can still, for yourself, duplicate this, or save your own version of this. You don't have to keep it synced. And as long as you're using a theme that does support patterns, a block theme, you can. I'll call this 2025 pattern phrase, something like this. I remember what it is. So now this is saved in the My Patterns section. So there it is. So now if I go back to the site, and this will be the last thing I show before I hand it back to Peter, is if I go back to my theme and I switch it to, I won't play with cadence because I'm not sure if that's going to work. That's been doing
It will work.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just stick with 2024 just because I know it definitely will work. So if I go to the 2024 theme, I can still use, I keep adding new pages. Get out of here. If I go here and I add underneath my patterns, there it is. Because as I said, the pattern itself has nothing to do with the theme. The pattern, if we look at it, is really just a collection of blocks.
Right.
So that may be something to get. If you're not interested in the 2025 theme overall, there are some decent patterns in there starting point. So there's quite a few of them. So
yeah,
take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, the one thing that you would not have are when the style variations are built into the pattern.
Right. Yeah.
So you would either have to set that up and export it. But yeah, that portability of
That's still that the one portability thing. I don't know if you were going to this. One portability thing actually drives me crazy about this. They're so close to making this a good thing, but you still can only export them one at a time. You can't export all your patterns. And just to show people again where that is. So if you want to see your patterns, if you go underneath patterns here, my patterns. So this one I just I copied previously. I was playing around the site many, many, many times. I can export this as a JSON file to my computer.
Yeah.
But I can't export all of it. There's like why, so.
That's interesting because and I'm wondering, there's got to be a plugin for that. One of the reasons why I say that is then when you have things like a cadence, and there's other tools that do this, when you have, I think it's just with the pro version, I think, but when you set your patterns, you can have a pattern library in the cloud of your own. And then when you link to that from other sites that you build, you're just pulling the things that you made.
You probably can if you're on WordPress.com.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and all that goes with it. So going along, so this all ties to the question we have, as Shani has, about building a site halfway on 2024, liking some of the things in terms of the design of 2025. What do you do? Now, what would I do? I would create a staging site, download it to local. I would experiment a little bit because I don't know 100%.
Or preview.
Or yeah, right.
Can I show that real quick? So I had this site I was just on. I just switched it. So if you're not familiar with this, you can actually kind of, it's not perfect, but you can. Let's say I'm looking at let's say this is your site built in 2024, and I have the 2025 theme. Like, I wonder what that would look like. You can do a live preview here, and that will give you at least some indication of what your site will look like in the new theme. You can really see what kind of changes are going to happen. And I believe it does apply. Yeah, once you start clicking on things, it breaks down a little bit, but I think it'll give you a little taste of what it can look like.
The things that you'll find with WordPress is most of, depending on what is theme dependent in style, but you've got, in effect, we still have the header area, the content area, the footer area, and then if you're in a situation where you're using sidebars or something, which are another, and those that get into the template parts of a theme, or in the classic theme, you're usually setting those in the customizer, the header, the footer. But that content area and things that you put in the content area is genuinely transferable. But you may have themes that then, it depends too on even if the, like, say, a block pattern is respecting the design of that you've set up in whatever theme you're using, and go, okay, well, I'm not, my header is following your header patterns, or my accent colors are following what you have. So there is some experimentation, partly because not every developer puts these things together the same way. Or if you've done something where you did a lot of what are called inline styles, or we're doing a lot of control and things at a very granular micro level, and then move that over, it's going to carry that code over with it. Because in all of these cases, you can go and look, you literally can go in the editor and say, well, edit the HTML, edit the code behind it. And you can see that's ultimately, even when you're copying patterns and stuff, in a lot of cases, you're copying that stuff.
I wish I had the capacity to do any kind of tinkering. I've done very basic stuff with Twentig. I used Twentig in 2024, but I feel like the 2024 patterns are kind of boring.
Yeah.
And I like these ones pop a little more. So I think I might, as you suggested, Ray, do a preview, and then I'm on SiteGround, so I have unlimited staging. Or
and create a backup too. If they create a backup for you, you can always.
So I think I'll just try.
I think going from a WordPress, if you're already on 2024, going from a WordPress theme to a newer WordPress theme, you should be fine. In fact, some changes you won't even notice. 2024 was a bit of an oddball theme. Like, I still, at one site, I had all the old themes installed on there. For a long time, their themes were very much blog centric. They've changed it. 2019, I think, was one that was more front page. So 2024 was an odd hybrid. Like, your homepage was this weird thing where it was kind of a homepage, and then there was blog stuff in it. 2025 has gone back to being like blog centric. The very first thing you see is like your archive of all your blog pages. So yeah, if you're building a blog, especially, I think the 2025 theme probably has some interesting features and patterns and stuff.
I'm not building a blog. It's my coaching website, but it's very basic, and it's basically a bunch of text and just explaining things. So,
yeah. You could even experiment with, like Ray, as you did. You go to the playground, or go just open up another site, put 2025 there, put something, and copy those blocks even into your 2024. And ultimately find out what works more seamlessly. Now, if you're still building it and you go, you know what, it's pretty close and all I have to do is tweak some things, yeah, go with the 2025. I mean, it is where having those patterns and then having the variations that says, okay, now I can, and then, you know, maybe going to the step where you're creating your own palette of the variations that match your brand colors so that everything works well. And you know, you don't have to go to each individual block because the blocks respect.
Yeah, that's what I liked about what you showed me, because for a very text-heavy website like mine, it's really nice to be able to do little individual bits of design more easily. So
Yeah. Perfect.
Take care, George. I know, George, we missed your question about WooCommerce hosting and all that. Ask that on the Facebook group.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, it's a tough one because everyone's going to give you a different answer. So ask it on our Facebook group. People can share their opinion.
Yeah,
And
there's some. It's been
hosting
getting
for
heavier.
everyone. Yeah, hosting for reminder for everyone. Black Friday is coming up soon. Great time to
Yeah.
sign up for some hosting. Good deals.
Cheers.
Take care. Hey, let's just Peter, I'm looking at things we need to cover HEIC, query loop, and then I'm gonna do the infamous connecting block. So in the connecting blocks one, I'm actually gonna show a query loop in there. So if you don't want to do that one, I could cover that as part of that. Or
Well, I can do a quick query loop and then
yeah, I'm gonna do a really simple one in my example too.
Yeah. So we did talk HCIC a little bit earlier, which is basically you can bring images directly into a page, your media library as an HEIC file, and it will convert it to a JPEG file. But it is dependent on your host having code. So you just treat it, if you have an Apple computer or an iPhone where I wasn't even aware that that's what my Apple, because when I send them whatever, it gets converted to JPEG typically. But if you're pulling directly out of, I guess, you know, your device or from your iCloud or whatever, that it is in this format.
Do you know that one? I think Sue might have had a question. She dropped it off. Do you know, does it delete it? Does it convert it on the fly and it doesn't store the HEIC version, or is the HEIC version stored somewhere?
Don't know the answer to that. And I can't experiment with it because I don't have iCloud on my PC.
I remember I may play around with that one. But
yeah.
Right.
Real quick. So let's do the gallery thing, which is, you know, one, you could have certain more of these controls, and it's hard to know, you know, go to that big giant grid and see what you can do. One of the things that they've added to it, I'll show real quick, that I think that is nice, is like your the spacing between images. But you know, the simple, I've got some images here. Yeah, we like cats here, and it's fall. These are AI, artificial intelligence generated images. I'm just going to pick these up and I'm going to just drag a whole bunch of them. Let me drag, you know, this many right onto the page, and it creates a gallery for me just right out of those images. So now it's uploading them to my media library, and then I will show you what you can do.
These are some of those ridiculous, yeah.
I know, right?
The cat looking at the turkey.
Yeah, the prompt was cats and kittens in a Thanksgiving setting. Which is fun. And yeah, we like cats. I like cats. Ray has a cat. I have 3. But then when you're looking at, so galleries now, and as of a few versions ago, are basically a container for images. And then when you're on that gallery, the gallery block itself versus the image block, this is where you have a little bit more control over the block spacing within the gallery. So as I'm setting this up left and right, or maybe I want everything. So you've got control over this, you know, dragging and dropping everything right onto the desktop, just saving that kind of step. And then on the image itself, one of the things that you can do is when you look at the link, and this is weird because this is being presented as new, but I swear we've shown this before, which is with the link, what you can do is make your images expand on a link. So link, and instead of linking to a thing, the image, a URL, if you do an expand on link, and now I'll save this, go to the page, let me refresh this.
I think that is new. Yeah, I don't remember that from before.
Yeah, so now it'll open up kind of in a lightbox thing where, so now I'm linking to, isn't he cute? I'm linking to make a lightbox. What's not there yet, I'm assuming it's going to happen next, is group that, you know, being able to grab them all, say I want them all to go in a lightbox, and then give me that left and right arrow so I can do it. Because right now you can't do that, and you have to do each one individually. It's curious how these images didn't fully load. That hasn't happened before, but that might be
your too many browser tabs.
Yeah, exactly. Anything else on the gallery that you can think of?
No.
Okay, and then I wanted to
make Gene says it was in another version. Okay, yeah. I don't remember it, but yeah.
But it's being presented as new. I don't know if it's, you know, I do know the dimensions are right. Let me just delete this.
I think that you had a switch you had to turn on and off.
Is that what?
Yeah.
You know, the automatic sizing is nice, right? So that it knows to fill in the things. You can move an image around within, you know, so there's that gallery feature. It'll be nice once they say open everything in a light box and let me navigate between them, because that's what we're kind of used to with blocks. And then the other one we want to show, so yeah, so the query loop, when we demonstrated this before, I had to show this thing where you had to click a default off or on or whatever it was to make it seem to work, because the way it was inheriting something from something, it didn't even make a whole lot of sense. They agreed to make a whole lot of sense, because now the default is to be a little bit easier. So if I were to go to my blocks and go to that query loop block and install that, now I can choose from a design if I wanted. You can go from scratch, but let's just say I like this design here. I do have demo data in here. It is working the way it used to be, where you'd see it, and then you go to your page, and it wasn't actually looking at your post to put in the query. But having more controls, the ordering, the sticky posts,
it's cleaner. Yeah, there used to be another toggle there, which is ridiculous. Everything's like something like the default or inherit from something. It was really confusing. They got rid of it. So I think
that inherit thing was totally confusing. It just made you feel like nothing was working.
Yeah.
And then, so here's something where I don't know if I need to still put it in a group to give it a background color, say I wanted to. But again, this having your controls are filtering, they've added even formats is now in filtering, which wasn't there before. Not that we're using formats, but so like post formats, which is like you'd have a different format for a video versus an image versus, you know, it's interesting how they're bringing kind of that back, but you can set your filtering here. You have more control over things. You can, you know, I'm doing posts. You can actually do pages in a query, which is kind of interesting. I guess if you have a number of pages that fit in a category and you want to show them, but they're not posts or pages.
And I'll show a custom post type, which also shows up in there too. So
yeah. So what's nice is it's just cleaner, faster, makes more sense. You know, I drop that query loop in, and now it has. Now I'm going to this post that I have.
That one's definitely subtle, but I like how they cleaned it up.
Yeah, exactly.
The other interface was just weird. It didn't make sense.
I think that was font management talks. Section styles is probably more than that. Was where I found it kind of interesting, where again, theme related, where you'd have a section and then you could set the colors and the fonts and things like that as a variation, but I haven't gotten into how to do that. Why don't I stop sharing? You grab it from here.
Yeah, let me show the bane of my existence. This one, I laugh because this feature has been talked about for like since 6.5 or something. It dropped off of one of them and then it came back. So what really annoys me is this whole thing about connecting blocks, and now they describe it's got a pretty picture, connecting blocks and custom code, custom fields with no hassle or code. Baloney. It's not true at all. But the idea behind this is something I've wanted for a long time. Anyone who works with custom fields, it's a little clunky displaying custom fields on the front end. And then I won't even get to the whole thing about the plugin stuff of advanced custom fields, but even just some regular custom fields, it's a little weird to display them. So the thought behind this, and if you watch some of these demos, they've built in the functionality into the block editor UI to now more easily link together custom fields. That's the promise. The problem is, though, it's not really built into core yet. So to get this thing to work, because I was going crazy looking at the demos, reading stuff, like, what am I missing? Luckily enough, I found a couple of people on YouTube who went through it and showed, in order for this to easily work right now, believe it or not, you've got to install this plugin from GitHub that's created by Automatic. It's called Create Content Model. This is another funny plugin that we may talk about in the future. This plugin is created by Automatic, again, the people who created WordPress. It's basically a plugin that is I'd say a lightweight combination of custom post types and custom fields. I'm not sure where this is going in the future, but anyway, you need this thing because what it does is there is code, despite that other picture I showed, there is code that you need to have in order to make the block editor aware of your custom fields. It's really the metadata. You've got to do something to kind of register that. Because that's what I was going crazy, because for people who aren't familiar with custom fields, let me just create, before I use the plugin for a second, I'll just show a real quick example of how you can add a custom field normally to any page. So one of the things is, okay, I've turned it on already too, sorry. So on this site, you may not even have this turned on or not, this custom fields thing. In order to add custom fields, just generic custom fields have been something that's been around for WordPress for years and years and years. So if I just want to add a generic custom field of, whatever my field, etc., I can add a value here. That won't work. That's what's going crazy. The ones you add here through the regular WordPress custom field interface will not work with this thing I'm going to show you. You have to have this. You have to use this plugin right now. There's other ways. If you wrote your own code, you can do it. But anyway, this is kind of the demo plugin. So I've installed this already. And let me go back to, let's leave. So this plugin, I downloaded it from that GitHub repository. It's created by Automatic, so I assume it's safe. So this plugin, I'll do a real quick example on this, is a combination of creating custom post types and custom fields. So once I've activated the plugin and installed it and everything, I now have this thing in my admin bar saying content models. Again, back to poorly worded things, data views, patterns. Content models are a horrible generic term that's very confusing. But in this case, I'm going to add what they're calling content model, which is really kind of a custom post type. So I'm going to create a new content model. We'll stick with actually, I'm going to use dogs. I think I had something else. And I want to display this on the side. So I'm going to call my content model dog. If you look here, what it's going to do is create a custom post type. So the singular is dog, plural is dogs. Icon on my admin bar is going to be this little stick pin. I can change this, just like you do for the custom post type UI. People use that plugin. But the funny thing is this plugin, this content model thing, also lets me define custom fields. So let's do two. I'll do one. I'll just call breed. So I'm going to have a custom post type called dog and a custom field called breed. And actually, I want image too. So as you can see, this is a paragraph. This one I'm going to make an image. So I'm going to call this, add an image into here. And what I could do though is I can bind these things to. It's a weird problem. I'm kind of binding the field to the post type. I'm going to add my binding. I'm going to call this one breed again, just because I'm lazy. And I'm going to call this guy. I'm going to call him add a binding. We'll say dog picture, something like that. Save my field. Okay, and this may not make a lot of sense yet, but trust me. So this is, now I've created this custom post type that also has custom fields defined in it, just with 2 custom fields, breed and a picture of what the dog's going to look like. So meanwhile, back my admin back end, I can now, I can add, see, I've got dogs up here. I don't have any dogs listed currently. I can add a new dog. I'm gonna just do 2 real quick. The dog's name is gonna, I have one called Snoopy. Snoopy is a beagle. Oops, Snoopy. Oh, here's the funny part. So if I want to add the custom field, now underneath attributes, this is the new thing that this plugin is it's exposed the custom field to the block editor. So if I go in here under content, I call that what, breed. And the UI is a little bit goofy too. So I want, because I did this test before too. Sorry, my Zoom, I can move my Zoom window out of the way. I think it's blocking me here. So under content, one more time, I have, isn't this guy? This guy. Sorry, read content. I think that's good. That's how it connected, I believe. I'm gonna call this Beagle. Oh, here it is. Oh, sorry, this is flip. Let me try the picture one instead. The dog picture. So his app, and this may be, again, this is a demo thing that may be messed up too, because I've already added stuff into it and my Zoom window is blocking me. Okay, there we go, that's better. So the attribute should be, let me try to reset all, okay. So my dog picture attribute is, no, it's not finding it.
Yeah, Ray, this is not intuitive.
it's now, yeah. So let me see if I can just get one more thing working on it. If not, I'll stop it right here. Yeah, because unfortunately I did a demo previously, so I think it's getting confused with my data left behind. But basically, this would be the way to connect those things together. So in order for this attributes thing to even show up in this list,
Yeah.
you need to have your custom fields exposed. Otherwise, the regular custom fields here, it won't work with these.
Yeah.
It's, again, so not ready for prime time by any means is this thing. But once you do get this connected, then you could treat it like a regular custom post type, and all those custom fields become available to you in a query loop, et cetera, et cetera. So, genius.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had tried to do that, to work with that too, because when I saw the YouTube video, I
Yep.
think I said, that's pretty cool. You don't have to install any other plugins, and it was like that. And I have tried it 3 times, and something always failed. And I was doing a demo last week and doing it, and I had problems with the image. It wouldn't show up. So I had to keep going back and rebind it.
Yes. It's exactly, and they say it's in beta and all that kind of stuff. But the thing that I don't like about the messaging was it makes it sound like it's built into core. The only thing that's built into core and is the ability to link into that. So in some ways, to me, this shouldn't be highlighted as much as it is in the contents. To be honest, it's probably as interesting as this, which is great for developers. You know, developers can now do this thing about you can override templates with plugins. That's great. You know, will most people, you know, who build websites care about that or use it? Probably not. And to me, that's what state this thing is still in. It's in a clunky state that really is not 100% exposed to regular people. So,
yeah, I mean, let's be honest that WordPress has and always has had an identity crisis when it comes to, you know, what audience or audiences are they trying to meet. And quite honestly, I wish that a lot of it was presented as the developer edition, the blog, you know, some level where it's just like, you know, the bloggers and the DIYers and stuff like that don't have to worry about some of these things because the developers are making this stuff work. The flip side is, again, this is a particular one where, yes, it's showcasing, and this is all about building in the thing that makes the other things happen. So that connector, if you will. But there are other tools, you know, we do use, you know, there's custom fields, but, you know, plugins like advanced custom fields, or I can show you what it looks like if you don't update it correctly and you You get the automatic version of it, gar. But the secure custom fields, which is just silly. But anyway, you know,
I think they're building this capability in, which is like, again, if you go to like Cadence Pro, I think it's only the Pro version, or like Divi or Elementor, that ability to basically tie custom fields to their blocks.
Yeah.
That's been there. That was one of the key features, from the beginning. And I know George dropped off already too, but I think that's what always has stopped people who are building websites for a living. It's like, if you've built sites using custom post types, custom fields, really the power of WordPress, you didn't have a good way with the core blocks to connect those things together. You still had to do it yourself, or use a different kind of use a different tool, or use the page builders.
So you could use page builder, cadence blocks, generate blocks.
Yeah, so I'm happy that they're building it in, but to me, like you were just saying,
present it when it's ready.
Yeah, tell me when it's ready.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, it's funny, but this is one where, like you said, it's a subtle 6.7. Most people probably have it installed at least on one of their sites. There's a lot to it. It's not always really apparent. Like I said, a lot of subtle things to it. Things moved around, some cleanup stuff, some things setting things up for future versions, etc. So could be worse. For me, at least, it's been stable. I know, Peter, you said, I think when we first started too, like I think I've seen a couple of reports of folks who've had issues. Has anyone, I'm just curious, folks who are still left on here, has anyone had any major issues with it that they've needed to roll back? I'd be surprised, although I'm sure there's always something. There's always a custom plugin someplace. I mean, I think the thing that tends to break things more is they keep pushing up the PHP minimum version more and more. That's eventually, I think, can break more sites for people.
I think in another meetup, I think Sue had mentioned something, or somebody else, and were a number of sites, but then that could also be indicative of something that, whether it's a plugin that they're using across a number of sites, or some custom code that they use across, there's some conflict, and especially when you have it happen with multiple sites, you've got some common, reason, and that's where the troubleshooting happens. For me, in saying, how come I don't have the Zoom? Yeah, I went through that exercise. That works. If we teach the troubleshooting technique of, you turn off the plugins that you've got, and then see if it comes back, and then start bringing them back and go, oh, wait a minute, Slim SEO or SEO Press, both cases that break it, come to find out that was a bigger problem that has to do with the meta boxes and whatever little I think it was literally a version of a thing, like, oh, you need to use the API MetaBox version 2 versus 1, or whatever it was. So, but troubleshooting, you can have a whole site go down in just one little thing, and it, we always try to say, don't panic, let's get to the root cause. So anyway.
Oh, I hope folks at least learned something new from this. Again, if you haven't played around with 6.7 or the theme, like I said, even if you're not going to use the 2025 theme, take a look at the patterns. I think there are some decent ones there that are at least good starting points, for building on, and you can always copy a pattern and use it however you wish.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious for for the folks left on the call, if there's any topics that you would like us to cover, or something, as we're trying to do more of the hands-on stuff. If there's one specific thing you'd like to see more demonstrations of, it would certainly like the feedback, whether now or in a later time. But that helps us kind of come up with some of the things that hopefully is interesting to the folks on our meetups.
Peter, is there do you guys have an opinion on this WordPress controversy? Because you went into ACF and everything, and I noticed you still had, Ray, the original ACF on as your plugin. And do you guys got any feelings or comments